Housel argues that these formative moments create a lens through which people view financial decisions, often unconsciously. For example, someone who grew up during the Great Depression might hoard cash and avoid investments, associating markets with loss and instability. Conversely, a person raised during the tech boom in the 1990s might embrace risk, viewing stocks as a path to quick wealth. Consider the story of two siblings raised in the same household, but with different financial outlooks. The older sibling, who witnessed their parents struggle during a recession, becomes a cautious saver, prioritizing job security and emergency funds. The younger sibling, born during a period of economic prosperity, pursues entrepreneurial ventures and high risk investments. These divergent paths stem not from intelligence or education, but from the distinct economic climates they internalized during their formative years. Housel emphasizes that no one's financial perspective is inherently right or wrong. It is simply a product of their environment. This insight encourages empathy and self awareness. To align your financial strategy with your goals, reflect on the experiences that shaped your money mindset. Did a childhood of scarcity make you overly conservative? Did a period of abundance foster overconfidence? By understanding these influences, you can adjust your approach to balance caution with opportunity. Beyond life experiences, emotional biases play a significant role in financial decisions. Housel highlights how emotions like fear, greed, and envy often overpower logic, leading to suboptimal choices. For instance, during a stock market crash, fear may prompt investors to sell a loss, locking in their losses rather than waiting for a recovery. Similarly, greed can drive individuals to chase speculative investments, such as cryptocurrency during a bubble, only to suffer when the market corrects. One classic example is the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. Investors, swept up in the euphoria of skyrocketing tech stocks, poured money into companies with no profits or viable business models. When the bubble burst in 2000, billions in wealth evaporated, illustrating how herd mentality and overconfidence can distort judgment. Housel argues that recognizing these emotional triggers is the first step toward better decision making. Strategies like setting predefined investment rules that I will not sell during a 10% market drop, or consulting a trusted advisor can help mitigate emotional impulses. Given the variability in life experiences and emotional biases, it's no surprise that financial strategies differ widely. Housel notes that what works for one person may be disastrous for another. A high-risk portfolio might suit a young professional with decades to recover from losses, but it could devastate a retiree reliant on fixed income. Similarly, a frugal saver might thrive on a minimalist budget, while another person finds joy in spending on experiences that enhance their quality of life. This diversity underscores the importance of personalized financial planning. Rather than copying the strategies of others, whether a billionaire investor or a neighbor with a flashy car, focus on your own goals, values, and risk tolerance. Housel's key takeaway is that financial success depends on aligning your strategy with your unique circumstances, not chasing a one-size-fits-all formula. Chapter 2. The Power of Compounding and Long-Term Consistency. One of Housel's most compelling insights is the extraordinary power of compound growth, which can transform modest investments into substantial wealth over time. Compounding occurs when returns on an investment generate additional returns, creating a snowball effect. However, its true potential is only realized over long periods, requiring patience and discipline. Housel illustrates this concept through the investment journey of Warren Buffett, often hailed as the world's greatest investor. Buffett's net worth, estimated at over $100 billion, is not solely a result of his skill in picking stocks. While his average annual return of approximately 22% is impressive, it pales in comparison to hedge fund manager Jim Simons, who achieved a 66% annual return. Yet Buffett's wealth far surpasses Simon's because he began investing at age 10 and continued for over 7 decades. This extended time horizon allowed compounding to work its magic, turning small initial investments into a fortune. Housel emphasizes that building wealth is less about chasing the highest possible returns and more about achieving consistent, sustainable growth. High return strategies often involve speculative investments, such as leverage trading or volatile assets, that carry significant risks. A single misstep can wipe out years of gains, derailing the compounding process. For example, consider the case of Long Term Capital Management, LTCM, a hedge fund in the 1990s led by Nobel laureates. LTCM achieved stellar returns through complex arbitrage strategies, but collapsed in 1998 due to excessive leverage and unforeseen market shocks. Investors lost billions, proving that even the most sophisticated strategies can fail without resilience and risk management. In contrast, Housel advocates for a disciplined approach. Invest in diversified, low cost index funds, save regularly, and avoid market timing. This strategy may not yield headline grabbing returns, but it minimizes losses and maximizes the likelihood of steady growth. The goal is to stay in the game long enough for compounding to work, rather than risking everything on a single bet. For the average person, harnessing compounding requires three key habits. Start early. Even small contributions to a retirement account in your 20s can grow significantly by your 60s. For example, saving $5,000 annually at 7% return from age 25 to 65 yields approximately $1.1 million, compared to $400,000 if you start at age 35. Be consistent. Automate savings and investments to avoid emotional decisions. Regular contributions, even during market downturns, ensure you buy assets at lower prices, enhancing long-term returns. Avoid interruptions. Resist the urge to withdraw funds or chase trends. Each disruption, whether selling during a crash or chasing a hot stock, reduces the time your money has to compound. By prioritizing these habits, anyone can leverage compounding to build wealth, regardless of their income or expertise. Chapter 3: Building Financial Resilience and Adaptability. Housel distinguishes between the skills needed to accumulate wealth and those required to preserve it. Accumulating wealth demands ambition, risk taking, and optimism, an entrepreneurial mindset willing to seize opportunities. Preserving wealth, however, requires humility, caution, and an appreciation for randomness. Many who excel at the former struggle with the latter, leading to financial ruin. Take the example of lottery winners, who often amass sudden wealth but lose it within years. Studies show that 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt due to extravagant spending, poor investments, or exploitation by others. Their failure to adopt a preservation mindset, marked by frugality and skepticism, undoes their windfall. Housel argues that preserving wealth requires recognizing that luck and external factors play a significant role in financial outcomes, fostering a defensive approach to money management. A key strategy for preserving wealth is maintaining a financial buffer or margin of safety to protect against risks and uncertainties. This buffer includes low or no debt. High debt levels amplify financial fragility, as interest payments and repayment obligations strain cash flow. For example, during the 2008 financial crisis, households with heavy mortgage debt faced foreclosure, while those with minimal debt weathered the storm. Substantial savings. An emergency fund covering 6 to 12 months of expenses provides a cushion for job loss, medical emergencies, or market downturns. Housel likens this to a blackjack card counter's bankroll, which sustains them through losing streaks until the odds turn favorable. Avoiding speculative investments. High-risk bets, such as improving startups or leveraged derivatives, can erode wealth overnight. A diversified portfolio of stable assets reduces exposure to catastrophic losses. Housel's blackjack analogy: card counters don't bet their entire bankroll on a hand, even with a statistical edge. They wager conservatively to ensure they can endure losses and stay in the game. Similarly, investors should prioritize survival over maximizing returns, maintaining enough liquidity to seize opportunities during market volatility. No financial plan is immune to black swan events, rare, unpredictable occurrences with profound impacts. Housel cites the example of German tanks in World War II, incapacitated by mice chewing through electrical wiring. Despite their advanced engineering, these tanks fell victim to an unforeseen vulnerability, underscoring the fragility of even the best laid plans. In finance, black swan events include market crashes, global pandemics, or personal crises like disability or divorce. To prepare, Housel advocates for diversification, spread investments across asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, and geographies to reduce exposure to any single risk. For instance, during the 2020 COVID-19 crash, diversified portfolios recovered faster than those concentrated in travel or energy stocks. Flexibility: maintain a versatile financial plan that can adapt to changing circumstances. This might mean holding cash reserves or investing in skills that enhance employability. Avoiding over-reliance: don't depend on a single income source, investment, or economic trend. A corporate executive who loses their job during a recession may struggle if their wealth is tied to company stock. By building resilience, you can mitigate the impact of the unknown and maintain financial stability through life's inevitable surprises. Chapter 4: The Non-Material Value of Money. While money is often associated with material possessions, Housel argues that its true value lies in the freedom, independence, and options it provides. Wealth enables you to control your time, pursue your passions, and live according to your values, which are far more fulfilling than conspicuous consumption. Psychologist Angus Campbell's research supports this view, finding that personal autonomy, control over one's life and choices, is the strongest predictor of happiness, surpassing wealth, status, or education. For example, a high-earning executive with no time for family or hobbies may feel trapped, while a modestly paid artist with flexibility to create feels fulfilled. Money's role is to bridge this gap, granting the ability to say no to undesirable obligations and yes to meaningful pursuits. Housel shares a personal anecdote that made it unbearable, prompting him to quit. In contrast, his father, a former ER physician, achieved financial independence through consistent savings, allowing him to retire early and spend his days on fulfilling activities like volunteering and travel. These stories illustrate that money's greatest gift is the power to design a life aligned with your priorities. Housel using money to chase social status, which leads to a treadmill of escalating desires. As income rises, so do expectations for luxury goods, larger homes, and exclusive experiences, perpetuating dissatisfaction. This phenomenon, known as the hedonic treadmill, traps individuals in a cycle of wanting more, regardless of their wealth. Consider the case of a tech entrepreneur who upgrades from a modest car to a Tesla, then a Ferrari, in pursuit of prestige. Each purchase provides fleeting satisfaction, soon replaced by envy of peers with private jets or vacation homes. Housel argues that true contentment comes from focusing on financial independence, not external validation. By prioritizing savings and investments over status symbols, you can escape this cycle and achieve lasting fulfillment. To maximize money's non-material benefits, Housel suggests define your values. Identify what matters most: time with family, creative pursuits, or community involvement, and allocate resources accordingly. For example, a couple might downsize their home to fund a sabbatical for travel or education. Set boundaries. Use wealth to protect your time and energy. This might mean declining high paying but stressful jobs or negotiating flexible work hours. Invest in experiences. Spend on activities that enhance well being, such as learning a new skill, attending a concert, or hosting friends, rather than accumulating possessions. By viewing money as a tool for autonomy, you can create a life that reflects your deepest aspirations, rather than society's definition of success. Chapter 5: Cultivating Gratitude and Humility. Housel emphasizes the psychological and financial benefits of living within your means, regardless of income. This doesn't mean deprivation, but rather finding contentment with what you have, rather than striving to match others' lifestyles. Excessive spending to keep up with peers, whether on designer clothes, exotic vacations, or oversized homes, leads to debt, stress, and a loss of financial freedom. Housel shares his own experience, noting that he and his wife maintained a modest lifestyle even as their income grew. By resisting the urge to upgrade their home or car, they saved a significant portion of their earnings, achieving financial independence without feeling deprived. This approach allowed them to prioritize long term security over short term gratification, fostering a sense of peace and control. Social comparison is a powerful, as there will always be someone with more. This mindset fuels overspending gratitude, trapping individuals in a cycle of inadequacy. For example, a middle class family might feel poor because their neighbors own a luxury SUV, even if their own finances are stable. Meanwhile, the neighbors may be drowning in debt to maintain appearances. Housel argues that true wealth is invisible, residing in savings, investments, and options, not invisible markers like cars or jewelry. By focusing on your own goals and appreciating what you have, you can break free from this destructive cycle. Housel's time as a parking attendant provided a first hand lesson in the illusion of wealth. He observed that owners of high end cars were often burdened by debt, their displays of affluence masking financial instability. In contrast, individuals with modest appearances, driving older cars or living in smaller homes, often had substantial savings and investments, granting them genuine security and freedom. This insight challenges the cultural narrative that wealth is synonymous with extravagance. True prosperity lies in the unseen: a robust investment portfolio, a debt free balance sheet, or the ability to walk away from a toxic job. Housel encourages readers to prioritize these invisible assets, which provide lasting benefits over fleeting status symbols. To cultivate a healthier financial mindset, Housel recommends: practice gratitude. Regularly reflect on what you're thankful for, such as a stable job, supportive relationships, or the ability to cover basic needs. A gratitude journal can reinforce this habit. Set internal benchmarks. Measure success by your own progress, savings rate, debt reduction, or investment growth, rather than external comparisons. Embrace simplicity. Find joy in low cost activities, like cooking a meal with friends or hiking, which enhance well being without straining your budget. By nurturing gratitude and humility, you can achieve financial serenity and focus on what truly matters. Conclusion: a holistic approach to money and wealth. The psychology of money offers a profound reframe of how we think about wealth, moving beyond numbers and investments to the human behaviors and emotions that drive financial outcomes. Morgan Housel's insights reveal that financial success hinges on understanding your own psychology, embracing long term consistency, building resilience, and valuing money for the freedom it provides. By cultivating gratitude and humility, you can escape the traps of comparison and status, creating a life of purpose and contentment. This expanded exploration has delved into the cognitive factors, emotional biases, and practical strategies that shape our financial lives. From the power of compounding to the importance of a financial buffer, these principles are accessible to anyone willing to adopt a disciplined, reflective approach. Ultimately, money is a tool, not for accumulating possessions or impressing others, but for crafting a life aligned with your values and aspirations. By mastering the psychology of money, you can achieve not just wealth, but true financial independence and peace of mind. Principles are accessible to anyone willing to adopt a disciplined, reflective approach. Ultimately, money is a tool, not for accumulating possessions or impressing others, but for crafting a life aligned with your values and aspirations. By mastering the psychology of money, you can achieve not just wealth.
Robert Kiyosaki, the author of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, says that earning money is a science that is not taught in schools. Schools teach us how to become an employee and build a career. If you are coming from a middle-class family like I do, then there's a high probability that your parents taught you how to become poor. And this is not because your parents don't love you or don't want you successful. It's simply because they themselves are not educated on this topic. They consumed expired information, and when you were born, they passed it on to you. Kiyosaki says poverty is like genetics, passes on from one generation to another. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one of those finance books that I wish I had read when I was 14 or 15 years old. I strongly recommend reading the book or watching this video because I will be doing a detailed summary of all 7 key lessons. Lesson number 1, the rich don't work for money. When he was 9 years old, Robert and his childhood friend Mike weren't invited to a understood that this advice wasn't going to help him to become rich. Robert's father, whom Robert calls his poor dad, was a teacher and made a good living, but always struggled financially. Seeing how determined Robert and his friend Mike were to learn about making more money, Robert's dad, the poor dad, advised them to go and talk to Mike's dad, whom Robert called his rich dad. Both Robert and Mike were quite surprised because Rich Dad wasn't rich yet. Plus, he never finished 8th grade, but ran multiple successful businesses. Nevertheless, they went to meet Mike's dad. On the day of the meeting, he asked them if they were ready to learn how to make money. They were excited and nodded their heads quickly. He then made them an offer. He said that he would teach them how to make money, but not in a classroom style. He would only teach them if they worked for him. According to him, he would be wasting his time if they just wanted to sit and listen as they did in school. They could learn faster if they worked for him. Robert wanted to ask a question, but he didn't give them a chance. He said if they couldn't make up their mind decisively, then they would never learn to make money. Opportunities come and go, and being able to know when to make quick decisions is an important skill. They knew they had to make a decision. Robert and Mike looked at each other and both agreed to take the offer. Mike's dad was pleased and said he would pay them 10 cents an hour, and they would work 3 hours every Saturday. Even though Robert had a softball game that day, he chose to work and learn instead of playing. He knew this was his opportunity, and he didn't want to waste it. So, Robert and Mike started working for Mrs. Martin, who was an employee of Mike's dad, and used to take care of a small supermarket. They were the kind of stores where people bought essentials like milk, bread, butter, and cigarettes. The only problem was that the stores didn't have air conditioning. So they had to keep the doors wide open to the road and parking lot, which meant that dust would swirl and settle inside every time a car drove by. Their job was to take canned goods off the shelves, brush them with the feather duster to get the dust off, and then restack them neatly. It was mind-numbingly boring work. They worked for 3 hours every Saturday and got paid 30 cents, which was not very exciting for them, since one comic book cost 10 cents back then. They did it because they wanted to learn how to make money. But after 3 weeks of doing this, Robert was ready to quit. He felt like a slave, working for just 10 cents an hour, and hadn't even seen Mike's dad since the first meeting. So, at lunchtime on the fourth week, he told Mike that he was quitting. The school was boring enough, and he didn't want to waste his Saturdays doing this job anymore. He was done. To his surprise, Mike started smiling and said that his dad had expected this to happen. He had told Mike to meet with him when Robert was ready to quit. It made Robert mad, but Mike said that his father's way of teaching was different from Robert's parents. He didn't like to lecture and used experience as a way of teaching. Robert agreed to meet with Mike's dad the following Saturday to hear him out. Even his real dad was angry with Mike's dad. Robert's poor dad had advised him to demand a raise of at least 25 cents an hour and to quit if he didn't get it. When Robert arrived at Mike's house, he was made to wait in line for 45 minutes before Mike's dad finally appeared. Frustrated and angry, Robert told Mike's dad that he had not kept his end of the bargain. He had promised to teach him if he worked for him, but he had not fulfilled his promise. Robert accused him of being greedy and not respecting his employees. He asked Robert if teaching meant talking or giving a lecture, and Robert replied with a nod. Rich Dad told him that life is the best teacher of all and that most of the time life does not talk to you. He explains that life often pushes us around to teach us something. Some people let life push them around while others fight back against the wrong things, such as their job, boss, or spouse. But only a few people welcome life's push as an opportunity to learn and grow. Rich Dad said that he had over 150 employees, but none of them had ever asked him to teach them about money. They only sought jobs and paychecks, never really grasping the purpose of their work. However, when Mike told him that both of them wanted to learn how to make money, Rich Dad decided to create a program that mirrored real life experiences. He paid them a mere 10 cents an hour, which initially made them angry. But he explained that he wanted them to experience life's push so that they could understand what he was trying to teach. When Rich Dad asked Robert what he had learned from working for such a low wage, he complained about his greed and lack of respect for his workers. He even threatened to quit if his rich dad didn't pay him more or teach him more. Rich Dad explains that most people would do exactly what he was suggesting: quit and look for a higher paying job. However, this usually wouldn't solve their problems. He wanted Robert to understand that waiting for a raise, thinking that more money would solve his problems, was not the solution. The solution is to make money work for you. Robert was slowly starting to understand the lesson Rich Dad was trying to teach. Rich Dad asked if Robert still had a passion to learn. When Robert said yes, he told him he was going to stop paying him for the work at the store. Robert was confused. He came for a raise, but now he was going to work for free? Rich Dad said that if he wanted to make more money, then he needed to use his head and figure it out. Robert and Mike worked for free for 3 weeks. One day, Mike's dad showed up and took the boys outside for ice cream. Rich Dad asked if they learned anything yet. They said no. The rich dad told them they better hurry and start thinking about the lesson that was staring at them. To explain the lesson, he asked the boys to look at Mrs. Martin and the people in the park and think if the life they were living seemed exciting to them. They worked hard for little money their whole lives, clinging to the illusion of job security and looking forward to a 3-week vacation each year and maybe a pension after 45 years of service. Rich Dad said if this kind of life excited them, he would be willing to offer them a raise of 25 cents an hour. Their heartbeats raised, and they knew it would mean so much to them, but still, they said no. Seeing their resistance, Rich Dad raised his offer to $1 an hour, then $2. Each time he raised his offer, Robert's heart started exploding, and his brain was pushing him to take the offer. He knew $2 an hour would have made him the richest kid in the world. He couldn't imagine earning that kind of money. He wanted to say yes. He could picture a new bicycle, a new baseball glove, and the adoration of his friends when he flashed some cash. But somehow his mouth stayed shut. Rich Dad was looking at 2 boys staring back at him, eyes wide open and brains empty. He was testing them, and he knew there was a part of their emotions that wanted to take the deal. He understood that every person has a weak and needy part of their soul that can be bought. And he knew that every individual also had a part of their soul that was resilient and could never be bought. It was only a question of which one was stronger. So he made a final offer of $5 an hour. Suddenly, the boys' expressions changed, and their empty looks changed into calmness. It felt their temptation disappear in the second. They felt the part of their soul that was weak and needy was silenced and taken over by the part that had no price. The rich dad said it was good they didn't have a price. Most people did because their lives were controlled by fear and greed. Fear of being without money makes them work hard and earn a paycheck. But once they have that money, greed gets them thinking about all the things they could buy, which makes them need more money, which makes them spend more and work more. It's what the rich dad called the rat race. Mike asked if there was another way, and Rich Dad said there was. But not many people knew about it. Mike wanted to know what it was, and Rich Dad said they would learn it while working with him for no pay. Mike asked for a hint, and Rich Dad replied that the first step is to tell the truth. When asked what truth, he replied that it was about how they feel, and they must confess it to themselves, not others. Rich Dad expressed doubt that the people working for him were capable of confessing their truth. Instead, they feel the fear of not having money and respond emotionally rather than logically. They do not confront their fear, and their emotions control their brains. They work to earn money, hoping it will relieve their fear, but it never does. Money governs their emotions and souls, and they refuse to acknowledge this truth. Rich Dad urged them to avoid this trap, stating that being rich does not solve the problem. When asked why, he introduced the other key emotion: desire. It's common for people to desire things that are better, prettier, or more exciting. They often work for money because they think it will make them happy. But the happiness from money is short lived. Many rich people are actually driven by fear, thinking that money will make them feel secure. However, they end up fearing losing it all, which makes them more anxious than when they were poor. Emotions often control our thinking, and fear can lead us to make decisions that don't solve the real problem. For example, when someone is afraid of not having enough money, they might think getting a job is the only solution. But in reality, a job is only a temporary fix for a long-term problem. It's important to learn how to think for ourselves and not let our emotions control us. Rich Dad said that he saw hope when both of the boys agreed to work for free. And they also took the first step when they resisted their emotions when Rich Dad tempted them with more money. They were learning to think in spite of being emotionally charged. He told them to keep working, and the sooner they forget about needing a paycheck, the easier their adult life would be. He encouraged them to keep using their brain, work for free, and soon their mind would show them ways of making money far beyond what he could ever pay them. They would be able to see things that others couldn't. The moment they saw one opportunity, they would see them for the rest of their lives. The boys did as Rich Dad advised, and pretty soon they saw an opportunity in creating a library where kids could pay an admission fee and read as many comic books as they wanted. They hired Mike's younger sister to be the head librarian. She charged each child 10 cents for admission to the library. It was a bargain for the kids since a comic book cost 10 cents each, and they could read 5 or 6 in 2 hours. Mike and Robert averaged $9.50 per week over a 3-month period. They paid his sister $1 a week and allowed her to read the comics for free. They had to close the library after 3 months because of a fight that took place there, but they had already learned how to make money work for them even when they weren't physically present. They had learned the first lesson, which was the rich don't work for money. They were ready to learn more, and Mike's dad was ready to teach them. Lesson 2. He started getting rich. He gives them the same answer: you need to be financially literate. For example, accounting is a subject that is boring, confusing, but absolutely crucial to financial success. To make it easy, Rich Dad used pictures and simple language to teach it to the 2 boys. One of the first things Rich Dad explained to Robert and Mike was the difference between an asset and a liability. He said that if you want to be rich, the only thing you need to do is buy assets. That's all you need to know to get rich. Understand this. Shouldn't everyone be rich? The problem is that most people have been educated differently by bankers, financial planners, and others. So they must unlearn what they think they know. And because of that, they buy liabilities thinking that they are assets. Robert uses simple definitions for assets and liabilities. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. This is the cash flow pattern of an asset. The top part of the diagram is an income statement, often called a profit and loss statement. It measures income and expenses, money in and money out. The lower part of the diagram is a balance sheet. It's called that because it's supposed to balance assets against liabilities. Assets add to your income, they put money in your pocket. For example, if you have a house and you rent it out, then it's an asset because it puts money in your pocket every month. And this is the cash flow pattern of a liability. A liability takes money out of your pocket. If you want to be rich, what you need to do is to avoid liabilities and instead buy more assets. Through these simplified diagrams, you can easily tell how each person handles money. Robert says often those in debt think the answer to their problem is to make more money. But not only will more money not always solve their problems, it may compound them. It's why many people who get a sudden windfall through the lottery or an inheritance quickly burn through it. An increase in cash only results in an increase in spending. What is missing for so many people is the financial education. It's why they might still end up successful in their professions, but still struggle with money. They may have learned how to make money, but not how to manage it. People can be very intelligent and still be illiterate when it comes to finances. They learned how to work hard for money, but not how to make their money work hard for them. Many people still believe that their home is an asset, but Robert teaches that a home is a liability because it takes money out of your pocket through taxes and other expenses. This doesn't mean you can't ever buy a house. You can, of course, but make sure to first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to pay for the house. Robert says if you want to get rich, all you need to do is to buy more income-producing assets, keep your liabilities and expenses low. And when will you know that you already have enough wealth? Robert uses the following definition for wealth. Wealth is a survive so many number of days forward, or if I stopped working today, how long could I survive? Another way of stating it, wealth is the measure of the cash flow from the asset column compared with the expense column. When your assets generate enough income to cover your expenses, you are wealthy, even if you are not yet rich. Lesson 3, mind your own business. A friend of Robert heard Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, speak at the University of Texas in 1974. He agreed to join the students at their favorite hangout for a few beers. He asked the students what business he was in. At first, they laughed, and then they answered that he was in the business of selling hamburgers, of course. But Ray told them he was not in the hamburger business, but in the real estate business. He knew that the land and location of each franchise were the most significant factors in its success. Today, McDonald's is the largest single owner of real estate in the world, owning some of the most valuable intersections and street corners around the globe. There's a big difference between your profession and your business. Often, Robert asks people, "What's your business?" And they say, "Oh, I'm a baker." Then he asks them if they own the bank, and they usually respond, "No, I work there." In that instance, they have confused their profession with their business. Their profession may be a banker, but they still need their own business. So many people work for their employer, the government, taxes, and bank, mortgage. What Ray Kroc and Rich Dad knew was secret number 3 of the rich. Mind your own business. Don't spend your whole life working for someone else. Too many people spend their lives minding someone else's business and making them rich. Minding your business doesn't mean starting a company, though instead, your business revolves around your asset column, not your income column. Keep your daytime job, but start buying real assets, not liabilities that lose value as soon as you walk out of the store. Keep expenses low, reduce liabilities, and diligently build a base of solid assets. Parents need to teach young people this before they leave home so that they understand what a true asset is and won't find themselves trapped in a lifestyle of debt. Robert says real assets fall into the following categories: businesses that do not require his presence. He owns them, but they are managed or run by other people. If he has to work there, it's not a business, it becomes his job. Number 2, stocks. Number 3, bonds. Number 4, income generating real estate. 5, royalties from intellectual property, such as music and patents. 6, anything else that has value, produces income, or appreciates and has a ready market. Acquire assets that you love. Robert loves real estate and thus spends most of his time thinking about and shopping for it. If you don't like real estate, don't invest in it. Even while working for Xerox, Robert minded his own business. He kept his day job and slowly built his asset column. The more he understood accounting and cash management, the better he was at analyzing investments and eventually building his own company. He doesn't recommend people start a company unless they really have the desire to. Otherwise, he advises them to keep their day job and mind their business, building and keeping their asset column strong. As cash flow grows, you can indulge in luxuries, but only if the cash flow supports them. Build the asset column and let the income generated by those assets pay for the luxuries. When assets generate enough income to cover luxuries, that's when you can buy them. Lesson 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. Many people see Robin Hood as a hero, taking from the rich and giving to the poor. Rich Dad did not share that opinion. He called Robin Hood a crook. Though the popular sentiment is that the rich should pay more in taxes and give to the poor, in reality, it's the middle class that is heavily taxed, especially the educated upper income middle class. To understand how this happens, Robert gives a brief history of taxes. In England and America, originally there were no taxes, only occasional temporary levies to pay for such things as wars. In 1874, England made income tax a permanent levy on its citizens. And in 1913, America made an income tax permanent. These countries were able to get taxes accepted by the majority because they were first levied only against the rich. However, although income tax was designed to punish the rich, it wound up punishing those who had voted for it, the poor and middle class. Rich Dad explained that he and Poor Dad were opposite. Poor Dad, as a government employee, was rewarded if he spent money and hired people, making his organization larger. But for Rich Dad, the fewer people he hired and the less money he spent, the more he was respected by his investors. Poor Dad sincerely believed the government should help people. For Robert, it was a challenge to work for one of the biggest capitalists in town and go home to a prominent government leader. It wasn't easy to know which dad to believe. But over time, as Robert studied the history of taxes, he saw an interesting perspective. As the government's appetite for money grew, taxes soon needed to be levied on the middle class, and from there it kept trickling down. But the rich saw an opportunity because they don't play by the same set of rules. Corporations, which became popular in the days of sailing ships, offered a way around taxes. Understanding the legal corporate structure gave the rich a steep advantage and allowed them to outsmart the intellectuals. A corporation is simply a legal document that creates a legal entity. It's not really a thing, not a factory or a group of people, but it offers a lower income tax rate than individuals have. This is why most wealthy people on the planet don't pay taxes or pay very little percentage of their income as taxes. Attempts to punish the rich rarely work because the rich find ways to minimize their tax burden. Lesson number 5, the rich invest money. Our mind is the most important asset. If you train it right, millions can be made from a simple idea or an agreement. If you increase your financial intelligence, you will start seeing things that others don't. In other words, you'll start inventing money. For example, in the early 1990s, the economy in Arizona, USA was terrible. When most people were scared and warned about the economic crash, Robert and his wife Kim made a lot of money. Robert gives an example of buying a house worth $75,000 for $20,000. They had to put $2,000 down as a down payment, but they didn't have it. So they asked a friend to lend them $2,000 for a $200 fee. The friend agreed, and while the purchase was being processed, Roberts ran an ad advertising the same $75,000 house for only $60,000 and required no down payment from the buyers. As soon as the house was legally his, he sold it in minutes, and the $40,000 was created almost out of nothing. Total working time, 5 hours. What this simplified example illustrates is how ideas can create hundreds of thousands of dollars if you improve your financial intelligence and see what others miss. Robert says, markets go up and down and investments come and go. The world is always handing you opportunities of a lifetime. You simply need to be able to see them. The more you develop your financial intelligence, which takes time, the more opportunities will be offered to you. There are many changes ahead in our world, and developing your financial IQ allows you to see that future of change through the lens of excitement, not dread. You'll see the opportunities and act on them, as opposed to those who allow their fear to keep them on the sideline, watching others move boldly forward. Land was wealth 300 years ago. Later, wealth was in factories and production, flies around the world at the speed of light, and this process will be faster and more dramatic as time passes. Lesson 6. Work to learn, don't work for money. Robert was interviewed a few years ago in Singapore by a journalist who, over the course of their conversation, revealed that she wanted to become a best-selling author like him. But her novels, which everyone said were excellent, never sold. Robert suggested that she take a course in sales training. That offended the reporter, who said she had a master's in English literature and didn't see how learning to sell would help her. In fact, she hated salespeople. When Robert pointed out that he was a best-selling author, not a best-writing author, she replied that she would never step so low and learn to sell, and left the interview. There are talented people all around us who struggle financially, just like that reporter. In the words of one business consultant, they are one skill away from greatness. When it comes to money, the only skill most people know is to work hard. If that reporter took some courses in sales, then got a job at an advertising agency, she would learn a lot about sales, and then she could use that knowledge to sell more novels. When Robert came out with his first book, If You Want to Be Rich and Happy, Don't Go to School, a publisher suggested he change the title to The Economics of Education. But Robert knew that such a title wouldn't sell. Even though he is pro-education, he chose a title that was controversial because he knew it would get him on more TV and radio shows. And it worked. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to learn a little about a lot. That's why Robert and his friend Mike had worked so many jobs growing up, to gain a variety of experiences. Most people work hard to get a secure job, focusing on pay and benefits in the short term. What they should do is seek work that will teach them the skills they'll need. Robert recommends a long-term view. Instead of simply working for money and security, take a second job to learn a second skill. Many will resist this because they aren't ready for change. But it's like going to the gym. You might have to talk yourself into starting, but you'll be so glad you did when the workout is over. Poor Dad wanted Robert to become specialized, even though that didn't work out well in his own life. He never understood that the more specialized you become, the more you are trapped and dependent on that specialty. Rich Dad, on the other hand, encouraged Mike and Robert to groom themselves and learn about a lot of different areas of business. According to Robert, the main skills needed for success are 1. Management of cash flow, 2. Management of systems, and 3. Management of people. And the most important specialized skills are sales and marketing. These are skills Robert works on constantly, attending courses or buying educational resources to expand his knowledge. Lesson 7, overcoming obstacles. The 4 main reasons financially literate people may still not develop abundant cash flow are 1. Fear, 2. Cynicism, 3. Laziness, And 4, bad habits. Let's look at each of them. Overcoming fear. No one likes to lose money. The only people who have never lost money investing are those who haven't done it. Everyone has the fear of losing money. The difference is how you handle fear and losing. The primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage that fear. Robert says, I have never met a rich person who hasn't lost money, but they don't let the fear of that take them out of the game. Most people play not to lose when they need to be playing to win. And that's why so many people struggle financially. They might have a safe, sensible, and balanced portfolio, but it's not a winning portfolio. They're playing not to lose. For example, a balanced portfolio isn't a bad thing, but it's not going to help you win big. It's not how successful investors play the game. You must be a little unbalanced in the beginning and put your eggs in a few baskets and focus on them. Overcoming cynicism. Whether it's our own self-doubt or the doubts of other people in our lives, often we allow that doubt to keep us from acting. We play it safe and opportunities pass us by. Robert shares the example of a friend who was about to buy an investment property for a great price, but backed out at the last minute when a neighbor, who wasn't an investor, told him it was a bad deal. Had he stayed in it, he would have doubled his investment and started to get out of the rat race. Doubts and cynicism keep most people poor. Rich Dad likes to say, cynics criticize and winners analyze. Winners keep their eyes open and see opportunities everyone else missed. For example, real estate is a powerful investment tool for anyone seeking financial independence. Yet every time Robert mentions real estate as a vehicle, he often hears, I don't want to fix toilets, or I don't want to deal with problematic tenants. They focus on toilets, and it keeps them poor. Overcoming laziness. What's the cure to laziness? A little greed. That can be hard to hear because so many of us were raised to see greed or desire as a bad thing. Rather than saying, I can't afford it, change your mindset to, how can I afford it? That opens the brain and forces it to think of solutions. I can't afford it is a lie. The human spirit knows it can do anything. By saying you can't do something, you're creating a conflict between your spirit and your lazy mind. How can I afford it? Creates a stronger mind and a dynamic spirit. Without that little greed, the desire to have something better wouldn't be possible. Our world progresses because we all desire a better life. New inventions are made because we desire something better. We go to school and study hard because we want something better. Too much greed is bad, but a little can motivate you. Overcoming bad habits. To be successful, you must develop successful habits. Poor Dad always paid everyone else first and himself last, but he rarely had any left over. This was his habit. On the contrary, Rich Dad always paid himself first, even if he was short of money. He knew that creditors and the government would complain if he didn't pay them. This motivated Rich Dad to seek other forms of income to pay them. If he paid himself last, he wouldn't feel that kind of productive pressure. Forcing himself to think about how to come up with the extra income to pay the creditors made him stronger. This is it for this video. I've summarized several other books from Robert Kiyosaki. If you are interested, then check out the playlist you see on your screen. Thanks for watching. Today, I'm going to summarize another book from Robert Kiyosaki called Increasing Your Financial IQ, Getting Richer by Getting Smarter. According to Kiyosaki, there are 5 basic financial IQs. If you want to get rich, and most importantly, stay rich, then you have to have all 5 of them. Financial IQ number 1, making more money. If you have a toothache, it means you have dental problems. To solve the problem and stop the pain, you visit a dentist. In the same way, if you are not earning enough money, it means you have money problems. If you start solving the money problems, the pain of not having enough money will go away, just like your toothache. For example, Let us say you want to improve your selling skills, but you are very shy and hate rejection. This is quite a serious problem that stops many people from becoming a salesperson. If you take courses or read books and solve this problem, you will become a better salesperson, which means you will sell more, and that means you will earn more. The reason you started to earn more is because you solved a problem. I think you would agree that solving money problems helps you to earn more. If that is the case, then the more problems you solve, the more you earn, and the higher your financial IQ number one goes. The path to making more money looks something like this picture. First, you start solving small problems. These are usually the problems on a personal level, such as lack of knowledge on certain topics or lack of self confidence, etc. Then you move on to more complex ones. It is like a game. Every time you solve a problem, you move to another level where there is another problem waiting for you to be solved. The more money problems you solve, the smarter you get and the more you earn. It also works the opposite. The more money problems you ignore, the poorer you get. You must solve your money problems as early as possible. Otherwise, there will come a time that you will be forced to do things that you don't want to do, and you will regret that you did not solve the problem when it was small. Once I heard an interesting story about the importance of solving problems early. It is a story about a farmer and a rooster. One day, a farmer comes to the rooster and says, "From now on, you will stop crowing in the mornings. If I ever hear you again crowing, I will pull off all your feathers." The rooster says nothing and stops crowing in the mornings, as the farmer requested. Some time passes and the farmer comes back again and says, "You know what? From now on, you will start walking like a hen. Otherwise, I will pull off all your feathers." Again, the rooster says nothing and starts walking and behaving like a hen. He starts to hang out with hens and even forgets that he is a rooster. A few more months pass by, and the farmer comes back again with another request and says, "You know what? From now on, you will start giving me eggs just like other hens. Otherwise, I will pull off all your feathers and make a dinner out of you." At this point, the rooster realizes that he had to fight back. He had to protest and solve the problem when the farmer made the first request. Now it is already late, and he is forced to do something that is impossible. To you, it may sound like a dumb story, but every day, many people are forced to do things that they are not proud of. They work for people or companies that they hate, but they do it anyway, because they have to put food on the table and feed their families. Kiyosaki says that many people want more money, but they don't want to go through the process of solving problems. For example, to become a medical doctor, there is a rigorous process of education and training. Many people dream of becoming a doctor, but the process gets in their way. What many people do not realize is that it's the process that makes them rich, not the money. In order to grow wealthy, you must come to terms with the fact that problems will never go away. Each time you find a solution to a problem, a new one will pop up. The key is to realize that the process of solving those problems makes you rich. And once you start solving not only your own problems, but others as well, then the sky is the limit. Simply put, infinite problems to solve. When Kiyosaki was a young boy, Rich Dad said, "Money problems make you smarter if you solve them." He also said, "If you solve your money problem, your financial intelligence grows. When your financial intelligence grows, you become richer." If you don't solve your money problems, it will lead to a series of other problems, and you will get poorer. Rich Dad used the example of having a toothache to illustrate what he meant by a problem leading to other problems. He said, "Having a money problem is like having a toothache. If you do not handle the toothache makes you feel bad. If you feel bad, you may not do well at work because you are irritable. Not fixing the toothache can lead to further medical complications because it is easy for germs to breed and spread from your mouth. One day you lose your job because you have been missing work due to your chronic illness. Without a job, you cannot pay your rent. If you fail to solve the problem of rent money, you are on the street, homeless, in poor health, eating out of garbage cans. And you still have the toothache. This might be an extreme example, but Kiyosaki says that this story stayed with him. I realized at a young age the importance of solving problems and the domino effect caused from not solving a problem. Many people do not solve their financial problems when they are small and at the toothache stage. Financial IQ number 2, protecting your money. Financial IQ number 1 is measured by how much you make, whereas financial IQ number 2 is measured by how much you keep to yourself. For example, a person making $200,000 a year has a higher financial IQ number 1 than the person who makes $100,000 a year. However, if the first person loses 50% of his income to taxes, but the second person loses only 15%, then it means he has higher financial IQ number 2 than the first person. Protecting your money from financial predators is important. As most of us know, the world is filled with people and organizations waiting for the opportunity to help themselves to your money. Many of these people and organizations are very smart and powerful. If they are smarter than you or have more power than you, they will get your money. This is why financial IQ number 2 is so important. Kiyosaki says, "When I was just a kid, my rich dad taught me the importance of protecting your money with a simple example. He said, a farmer needs to protect his crops from bunnies, birds, and bugs. Bunnies, birds, and bugs are thieves to a farmer. Using the idea that bunnies were thieves served as a powerful lesson. Bunnies were cute and cuddly. They were harmless. The same was true of birds. The reason he used cute creatures such as bunnies and birds was to make the point that some of the biggest thieves of our personal wealth are not just bandits, criminals, or outlaws. He used bunnies and birds because he wanted us to remember that some of the greatest financial predators are people and organizations that we love, trust, or respect. These are the people or organizations we think are on our side and are standing behind us. Rich Dad said, the reason so many people stand behind us is because it is easier to get into our pockets from that position. One of the reasons so many people have financial problems is because they have too many hands in their pockets. Rich Dad's list of financial predators are following. Number 1, bureaucrats. As we all know, taxes are our single largest expense. The job of the tax department is to get your money and turn it over to a government bureaucrat who spends it. The problem with most bureaucrats is that they are very good at spending money. They do not know how to make money, which may be why they choose to become bureaucrats. If they could make money, they would probably be business people instead of bureaucrats. Since they do not know how to make money, but love to spend it, bureaucrats spend a lot of time figuring out more and creative ways to take our money via taxes. As you know, we already pay taxes on our income, investments, homes, cars, gasoline, travel, clothing, meals, alcohol, cigarettes, businesses, education, etc. We pay taxes upon taxes. We pay taxes on things we don't even know about. These taxes are sold to us as being good for society, and some are. Society's problems, however, only get bigger because bureaucrats do not know how to solve problems. They know how to throw money at the problems. Before you get angry at what I just said about taxes, let me tell you that Kiyosaki is not against the government or paying taxes. As the Rich Dad said, taxes are an expense for living in a civilized society. Taxes pay for schools and teachers, fire and police protection, court systems, the military, roads, airports, food safety, etc. Rich Dad's frustration with taxes was that bureaucrats very rarely solved the problems they faced, which meant taxes had to keep going up. Since taxes keep going up, Rich Dad's philosophy was, a bureaucrat's job is to get their hands deeper in your pockets legally, and your job is to have them take as little as possible legally. Unfortunately, it is often the people who earn the least who pay the highest percentage in taxes. At one event, Warren Buffett had this to say about taxes. The 400 of us sitting here in this room pay a lower part of our income in taxes than our receptionists or cleaning ladies do. If you're in the luckiest 1% of humanity, you owe it to the rest of humanity to think about the other 99%. The author says if you want to protect your money from taxes, then you need to understand how different types of incomes are taxed. There are 3 different types of income: earned, portfolio, and passive. In case you don't know, earned income is the income you get for working for a company or for someone 9 to 5. Portfolio income is the income you get from owning stocks and bonds. Finally, passive income is an income assets that bring you money and not allow for much protection from taxes. On the other hand, portfolio income and passive income are one of the many reasons why Kiyosaki I know it may be uncomfortable to have a agreement,
What?
but it's the financially intelligent thing to do, especially in this time when the divorce rate is 50%.
Hello?
When forming a new business with a new business
Brother.
partner, I know it may be
Brother.
difficult to think about a buy-sell agreement. Business agreement,
Bro,
we just start out. Intelligent to
Joe.
think of your exit, enter into the agreement. You never know what can happen in the future. Death
wala
is
cinto
the
ate.
percentage of your money these grieving relatives be controlled by
Oh,
you,
yan, ano ka rin, di ko
even
ba
after
ganyan?
you. Predator number 3.
Yeah.
Lawyers. You may remember the person who sued McDonald's claiming the coffee was too hot. That is an example of a financial predator using the courts to get your money. Millions of people are waiting for any excuse to court and take your money. Knowing these predators are always on attack, actually intelligent person must do. Number 1, keep nothing. My house is in my name. Financially smart people
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
buy personal liability immediately. Remember, you cannot buy insurance when you need it. No one sells it is on fire. 3, hold assets of value in good legal entities such as an LLC, limited liability company. There are also bad legal entities. These are sole proprietorships and general partnerships.